If you try to guess how a team's season, playoff series, or even one game will go, you'll probably end up being wrong. But not for the reasons you'd expect to be wrong. You'll be wrong because of events that are completely unforeseeable. For example, at the end of the 0-1 season, suggesting that the last place New York Islanders would become a playoff team the next year would get you more than a few funny looks. Suggesting that they would also start a long, painful, bitter series against the Toronto Maple Leafs of all people would get you put in a home. But that's one of the many great things about hockey. Sometimes bad blood just pops in completely out of the blue. And sometimes it's the unexpected chapters, the surprising stories in NHL lore, that end up changing the game itself. The New York Islanders had been a largely irrelevant team to end the millennium, and were making their first playoff appearance in 8 years. But the fact that they were there at all was great news. They had finished dead last in the NHL the prior year, and rocketed all the way up to 7th in 2002. From the outside, it seems like this team was going through a rebuild, and the picks and prospects it acquired in their tank years were maturing and finally able to make a difference in the bigs. Well, no. Most of them had been traded away to get players who were difference makers now. And to this point, it had worked. Let's not talk about how it would pan out. Here are the Islanders' heroes of this story. Alexei Yashin, big playmaking center in his first season with the Islanders. Michael Pekka, a mainstay of the late 90s Sabres' deep runs, and a perennial Selke nominee for the best defensive forward, was acquired in a trade over the summer. Chris Osgood, who needs no introduction but who you definitely forgot was on the Islanders, got picked up as a waiver claim, if you can believe it. Sean Bates. He was a free agent signee who had 5 points the prior year, and exploded for over 50 in 2002. Last are the duo of Roman Hamrlik and Adrian Aucoin, two big defensemen with long and storied NHL careers. Aucoin was acquired from the Lightning that summer, and Hamrlik from the Oilers 2 years earlier. Together on the power play, they were a force coming from the blue line. Not one of these players was homegrown on the island. Their coach was none other than Peter Laviolette, whom the Islanders had plucked from the Providence Bruins. He was the driving force behind signing Sean Bates, who had been playing in his system in Boston. To start the playoffs, Laviolette would break up the Lucky Sevens line and have Yashin center Bates and Mark Parrish, a winger who came over in the Jokinen-Luongo trade. But these lines would be all over the place by the end of the series. As far as team history goes, the Leafs were the Isles' near polar opposite. They enjoyed some pretty healthy regular seasons and were looking to make their second conference finals appearance in 4 years. Heck, their only 2 losses since were to the Devils, who made the finals both years. The Leafs' cast of characters were the following. Leading the charge was the incomparable Matt Sundin, the 8-year veteran of Toronto who was still tearing it up at age 30. Alexander Mogilny, who was also getting up there in age but still brought it offensively. Cujo himself minded the net. No explanation needed. One of the elder statesmen, Gary Roberts, who you probably know from the Too Much Man meme. Last but most certainly not least, Darcy Tucker, a wild man who could stir the pot with either his fists, his hands, or just his big mouth. There's not room to fit them on this screen, but defenseman Jake McCabe and bottom 6 center Shane Corset also played really big roles in this series, even if they didn't light up the score sheet. Corset in particular was an agitative, defensive-focused center who would be tasked with shutting down Alexei Yashin, as he had the prior year when the latter played for Ottawa. As a matter of fact, Yashin was goalless in his last 10 playoff games. Having sustained a broken hand, there was worry that Curtis Joseph would be a little cold, having only played 2 games since the Olympics. Time would have to tell for Cujo. On the point of injuries, Leafs GM and coach Pat Quinn would say before Game 1 that, "We're the underdogs because we have so many injuries." To which Peter Laviolette would reply succinctly, "Nice try." This series would open up at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, and the general slowness of the first few games would betray how vicious this series would become. As is common in the playoffs, the first shift set the physical tone, heralding in the new, no-holds-barred season. For now, the players would vent their anger onto the scenery.
Up they move. A coin delivers the pass. It's fired in by Kenny Johnson. And a glass broken to the right of the goal.
I miss the days when glass would break like that. Look at that. It broke so gracefully. It's art, really. But it would be the only such thing in an ugly series.
Near the boards. Good pressure by New York in front of the net. Here's a shot. And down goes Joseph, but they score.
Speaking of ugly, Curtis Joseph falls over sideways, and Kenny Johnson blasted into next week from barely the hash marks. This series is already weird. Given that the Islanders controlled most of the play in the first period, the Leafs would have to get a little greasy to get one past Osgood. Even so, they would be lucky to escape the first only down by 1, and lucky to have all their fillings. But worse news would befall the Leafs almost immediately.
Matt Sundin is not on the Leaf bench. He only played 5 minutes in the first period, which is a lot less than normal for him. We'll try and find out why.
Without Sundin, the Islanders tasted blood, but couldn't pot that second goal. And they couldn't muster much sustained traction in the second. There's a big hit by Corey Cross. What's going on back there? What is that? What is that? Then the weird came back, with bodies flying all over the place. Somebody could hurt themselves. Fortunately, nobody did, but the Maple Leafs fans were getting restless, and I don't disagree. It was a pretty standard clutch and grab era game. There hadn't been much sustained excitement to that point, and only one goal. To that point. A great heads-up play by Travis Green to get the puck to the net is exactly what the doctor orders in the playoffs, and Darcy Tucker paid it off. And that's all you need to turn the game around.
Oh, his pass, Domi shot, has scored a goal for the Maple Leafs.
When the enforcer scores a goal, it's basically the best thing ever. You could tell from his teammates' reactions how elated they were. Not least of all, because now they had the lead. With all the momentum favoring Toronto, they pushed hard for the insurance marker.
The Leafs have a 2-on-1. Sundin carries in with Renberg, and it's behind him. The trailer took the shot. 1:28 left. Third period. Give away. But Gilney. Stopped by Osgood. Here's a chance. Janssen right in. Goalie down. And the puck comes all the way back. And has saved it right there. Empty net for the Maple Leafs. They're going to score. And this game will be history. 39-28.
Who else? Who else? Game 1 to Toronto. They only showed up for about half the game, but they showed up where and when it mattered most. And that's the difference. Game 2 would be the 100th playoff game in Curtis Joseph's career, but would he be able to pull off a victory for his team? Both teams came out firing.
On now. Parrish in front. Oh, yes, and shot it wide. Brought right back for the feed to Corson. Drive off the Osgood.
And threw in a little snarl as well. There was this really weird sequence where Isbister cat paws at Roberts. And then Roberts re-inhabits his own body a second later. You could definitely feel the simmer. Like now that they were acclimated to each other, they were comfortable throwing their weight around. Though the last person who needed persuasion to do so was Darcy Tucker, who was always comfortable getting right in your face. But the Islanders would back up their snarl with scoring chances.
With it through one at the front, it's blocked aside by Joseph. They had got it on the wing for Parrish, and that one blocked aside by Joseph. Bates throws his man away, moving in his pack. He's got Isbister, got in front to him. Save Joseph! Rushing ahead is Isbister. Can he go by Pilash? He's in! Save made by Joseph!
Once again, the Leafs would be lucky to not be down on the scoreboard after 20. Hockey really takes it out of you, man. Here, have some early aughts CGI. I don't know what this is a commercial for, but it's nice. The Leafs kept up the physical play, but overall their effort was still paltry in the second. They only got what the Isles gave them.
Oh, and a healthy hit on Renberg.
Chris Osgood, and especially Curtis Joseph, stood tall, keeping everything out of the net.
Fires, pad stop Joseph, rebound, and he's able to cover by Pekka in a good defensive move. McCabe, a shot deflected off of Osgood. Blocked by Van Imp. Then one in front, and it was deflected just wide.
Scoreless after 2.
We're not hitless, but we're scoreless.
But more than just how lacklusterly they had played on the ice, the Maple Leafs would worry that Sundin had barely played in the second period. Injury rumors were now becoming realities. But he didn't need his shooting arm working to make a difference.
He's on the ice.
Domi threw it across. Oh, and how did it not go? It's in. A remarkable stop by Osgood, but the follow through by the Leafs, and they get the first goal.
Right at the center of this scoring play was Matt Sundin, and if he could get points on the board even while winged, the Islanders would be in serious trouble. Anyway, the Islanders did not appreciate Macaulay scoring on them, so they punished him.
The drop comes to Sundin.
And then it seemed like both teams remembered that they could both punish and shoot.
That one kicked aside, but followed up by a point, and a shot is saved by Joseph. Puck dribbled through. Darcy Tucker brings it ahead. He's got Green breaking to the net. Got it there, deflected off of Osgood. Brought on now by Healy. Moves in with Hoagland. Healy a drive, and getting a piece of that was Osgood.
The Islanders did everything but beat Curtis Joseph.
Miller, he just circles the outside. Spun one in front. Oh, and it was sent wide by Scatchard. Out in front, he tries again, and that one blocked by Joseph. Turnaround shot. Oh, and that one ricocheted off Joseph, too. You can tell by the players who changed teams. Here's a beat
and the Leafs just killed time to the chant of "Go Leafs Go." The best defender on the Leafs to close out the game was Cujo himself.
Came over to Bates again. Bates fed one in front, shot. Oh, what a save by Joseph! Bates trying to work away from Corson. Spun one in front, jammed by Ashton and grabbed by Curtis Joseph. Peeling off with it now is Bates. Threw one in front. Ricochet out in front. They battle for it. It goes to the corner. 17 seconds to go. Stopped by Pekka behind. Looks to the front. Can't get it there as it's thrown back along by Sundin. Striding ahead is Caberlet. The net is empty.
Just like the score, the Leafs would head south of the border with a series mark of 2-0. It seemed like the Islanders' strategy was to cause a kerfuffle. Blow them up when you can and get under their skin. And if it works, it works. But it didn't, so it doesn't. They just weren't producing enough. Mike Milbury, the Islanders' GM, who was once described by Stan Fischler as one of the best groaners to ever come down the pike, stirred the pot in the media. He actually brought the press into the Isles video room to demonstrate to them how exactly the Zebras were screwing over the Islanders. Well, he's nothing if not confident. Pat Quinn would join in this carnival as well, firing back at Milbury with his own assertions. It was all a mental game. Now the series shifts to New York, to a place called the Nassau Coliseum. Now, buildings are called Coliseums as a holdover from the Greco-Roman influences in America's founding, but seldom does it actually feel like you're watching a blood battle worthy of one. Tonight, and for the rest of the series, we would be. Invigorated by the crowd, the Isles came out of the gates swinging.
Then thrown into the boards in the corner. Janssen ripped the high shot. Well, Hammerlick. Pekka, ripped wide. Tchaikovsky shoots. Right on.
But Toronto would draw first blood in this arena.
In front, scored. What a play, and Mogilny had the open net.
This goal was almost like the universe desperately trying to remind these teams that goals win games, not hits and scrums. But buddy, you better believe that fuse has already been lit.
And on the move. A point. We're checking him. Sundin giveaway. Stopped by Osgood. What a chance for Matt Sundin.
Fortunately for Eric Cairns, boo-boos like that are completely forgotten if the scoreboard soon tells a different story.
New York Islanders, Janssen got loose, but then he was covered. Got it again. Back to the line. Hammerlick. Running, shooting. Joseph score.
Finally, Mark Parrish gave Nassau a reason to get on their feet.
Here's Tabasha. Backhand. Can't get the shot. He comes up front. Lume knocked down in front of the net. Webb is getting a going over in there on this ship now. Long shot in front of the net. Scramble.
Even through penalties and bruising battles, the Islanders just kept pouring it on, racking up more shots in that period than they had in all of Game 1. Not one to be forgotten, Chris Osgood made the necessary plays to bring the Coliseum to a fever pitch.
Seems to be okay, and he joins the three-man rush. Pass in front. Oh, what a save by Osgood.
Into the second period, you could see a pattern begin to develop in the way the Islanders played in the Coliseum. Quite simply, wear the opponent down. And it was no doubt possible because of the deafening crowd that was egging them on.
Pass comes back for Miller. Winding up. No shot is covered too well. It's in front. Weak shot. 1-1. Point shot. Rebound. Score. Right in front of the net. Brad is Mr. And jumping in on the wing left point. Right in on goal. Oh.
Nassau was so alive, they let the refs in the Maple Leafs have it, even when nothing was happening.
Because the puck's not in the Leaf zone. And the
It was just a matter of time before the floodgates opened.
serve the 2 minutes for the goal. Shot on the boards. Here's Pekka. Right in. Scores! Michael Pekka, the captain. Islanders to a point a third time. Janssen ripped it. Score! Parrish. Joseph fires it back to center. Tucker is nailed. Miller got it back. Joseph without the stick again. Low shot. Score! Catcher! Scores! 6-1.
Floodgates for both goals and fights.
In the scratch. And Tucker is the man throwing. Right hands, and in comes Webb to deal a hit. Now we're going to get a lot going here, I believe.
A lasting image from this game would be Darcy Tucker having an aneurysm at Michael Pekka, who just does not care. A good old-fashioned blowout. Every series has got to have one. Gary Roberts took a swing at Jerkovsky after the whistle, and Isbister let Roberts know just what he thought of that. There's usually two stories to a blowout, depending on who you ask. Either the winning team was just playing to bring the cows home, or the losing team was completely invisible. In the case of Game 3, it could easily be the latter. I'm pretty sure I just hallucinated blue sweaters on the ice because not a single player showed up except Cujo, who got no help having to stare down 9 penalty kills. Looking at it from an outside point of view, the Maple Leafs were starting to look like the bad guys. The Isles were physical pests, sure, but they didn't throw tantrums when they lost the first 2 games. In any case, from here on out, this series would show viewers both the best and the worst that hockey has to offer. Around this time in a series, we see the lull, the point after which both teams have graced their home fans with an appearance, and after both teams have gotten over the chaotic hump of adjusting to playoff hockey. Would we see one here? Nope.
Here's 16 in blue, down low, McGill, the chance, great saves, oh, good rebound, loose, McCauley denied on the doorstep.
And to respond to it.
Look at Steve Webb again, huge hit. Michaels lost his stick, playing like Lumber Parrish. Nice feet, gosh, it tries the one-timer blocked. By course, it's loose. Here's Adrian O'Connor, some room, some time. Rough toward the net, puck loose. Yes, it scores! He finally did it! First playoff goal in 4 years!
Yashin broke his scoreless streak, and the Islanders fans let him know their appreciation as the goal was announced over the PA.
Off the shoulders of Alexei Yashin.
Matt Sundin leaving the game with injury for the Leafs would be almost as big of a problem as the officiating.
Not playing tonight. And a penalty behind the play. Domi can't believe it. He and Tarch.
And to put it mildly, Coach Pat Quinn was a disbeliever. Color commentator Neil Smith posited that the GMs were both making a really big stink about the officiating to draw attention in the media onto themselves. That is, away from the struggles of Yashin and Sundin. It's a really interesting idea, but only these two know for sure. In any case, their gripes against the officiating would be founded, as the game's production came on the special teams, and almost the entire second period would be bogged down by penalties.
Lost it. It's airborne at the goal line, and he covers up.
And another penalty.
Second, and another penalty is called. Here's Reichel at the point. Roberts down low. It's McGill, a shot, and off the body and in the goal.
Rarely see that.
Penalty coming up behind the play.
A lot of people haven't talked about that.
A corner drive, another penalty's coming up as Green got hit. Rebound loose down low. Penalty coming up. Green was tripped up from behind. Works down low. Yashin. Room. Time. Shot. It's loose behind Cujo.
It was a penalty parade masquerading as a hockey.
Would have hit him McCauley, but he's going to take a penalty. Traded out to Vancouver. And we've got a call holding the stick penalty behind the play. Roberts for McGillney. In he goes. Save made off good. Rebound Reichel drive. What a save. It's along the near wing. He'll bank it off the boards. Send for Caberlet with a good burst of speed. Has Healy with him. Cross size play. And it's in the net. Caberlet scores.
A great heads-up play by Caberlet caught Osgood leaning, and that stinker of a goal changed the outlook of the whole series. Suddenly, the Leafs were winning. Going into the third, the difference between 2-2 and 3-1 in this series is seismic. It's either a brand new series or a practical death knell. And the Islanders knew it.
Last night home, on the move. Bates keeps it alive. Hunter Sarah tries sketching him in. The near circle. And he keeps it alive for a point. He'll throw it toward the net. Deflected wide. Navasha gets the return pass. The man missed the net.
Game up 3-1.
Bates, nice move, offensive zone. Tries the backhand and a piece of it. Bates and Johnson. Kenny Johnson shot through traffic. Rebound Parrish. Sent just wide. Aggressive play. Jerkowski off the half boards. Yashin in front. Miller shot. Let's go!
But in this game that had exploded in the third, somebody still had to take the lead.
Tie things up third period. Hamilton across the line some time. Big shot.
A perfectly placed shot by Hammerlick caught Joseph off his angle this time. What a time for your first playoff goal. The Leafs had 5 minutes to tie the game back up. They did it in 1.
Scatcher draped all over him. Wrap around, try Carson scores! Sherry Carson has tied this game at 3! Huge goal for the Maple Leafs!
Oh, the most timely Leafs goal of their season to that point. If Corson doesn't grind out a goal there, the Leafs probably never would have tied it.
Chris, it's already in the net, Chris.
The hockey gods had decided to make this third period one for the ages. So, what's a little more magic?
Sean Bates is in, and he's tripped up. He's tripped up on the white of the net. We're going to have a penalty shot. We will have a penalty shot tonight on the island. Sean Bates is going to get it.
A penalty shot. The announcers were losing their minds, and I would be too.
What a game tonight on the island. It's really unbelievable. Look at Curtis Joseph. He doesn't care about this. He's already stopped 4 penalty shots this season. Boy, is this exciting. A crowd that's going nuts and a penalty shot.
Sean Bates. 2 points the prior season. He could essentially win Game 4, bringing the Islanders all the way back to a series tie. Asking Michael Pekka for advice on what move to make, he replied simply, shoot the puck. Curtis Joseph, the spine of Toronto's team, could come up clutch after an iffy goal and suck the life out of Nassau Coliseum heading into overtime. But only one of them could win the duel.
He got some advice from the captain, Mike Pekka, a moment ago. Here he comes. Penalty shot for Bates. Scores! Islanders lead again in a great game from Nassau.
Through the momentum-killing penalties, the bad goals against, and after the most confident wrist shot I have ever seen, the New York Islanders arrived at Nassau that night and simply refused to walk away without a victory. Side note about the commentators, I love how they called this game. There's no over-explaining rules or kowtowing about the nastiness of the sport to sensitive new fans. They're just living it up in the face of an awesome game, and that's how it should be. Kudos to them. Neil Smith once again brought up a really good point.
Plenty of time for Chris Osgood to make another mistake.
And that's what the Leafs had to gun for in the final 2 minutes. Another Islander mistake.
The ex-Islander Green, a huge face-off. Bouncing puck. Caberlet, big for the goal, pass not made.
But it never came.
Final 10 seconds, Green. Michael one-timer well wide. Tucker centers, comes through. 5 seconds left. McCabe trying to throw it on net. It comes wide. Tucker centering, drives loose.
Yet again, a Maple Leaf took a run at an Islander after the ending whistle, but it would be too little, too late. Whether you think it was the Islanders' effort that had closed the gap, or the Maple Leafs that had done more to lose the lead, the series was tied. The pressure sat squarely on the shoulders of the Maple Leafs as they returned to the ACC, ready to host a brand new series. And in their desperation, they would make this series infamous. The bleakest game of the series would start off with a little bit of funny. Pat Quinn made a pretty bad boo-boo at the bench. Robert Reichel was not written as part of the starting lineup, so he couldn't play. The rule is but at the same time, how do you make that mistake? Especially if you're a veteran like Pat Quinn. So right off the bat, Toronto would be down a man. The Islanders couldn't sympathize. Yet.
Put behind the goal, that's ball coming to the corner. Out front with a shot, he scores! Carry ball coming from the corner and full Osgood.
Another stinker from Osgood gave the Leafs a little room to breathe, and they took it.
Fires it up there in front of the net. Good save that time, and keeps going for it. He turns from him. McCabe nailed him. Leafs center up, score! Hoagland.
Boy, if this gets out of hand early, especially the way this series has gone, we could be looking at cheap shots and fights aplenty. A scrum soon after sent 6 skaters to the penalty box. The refs sent a message that they were going to be calling this one tight. But a penalty must be preceded by an infraction. And nobody could stop what was coming.
Leafs dump it back in for Roberts to come in on Janssen. Whoa! The heat coming to Janssen hard. And he's down.
And
He's
Roberts
been
is gonna
hurt.
get penalty.
Kenny Janssen was motionless on the ice for a long time, but fortunately he wouldn't have to be stretchered off. All the same, it was pretty apparent that he was done. Petquin said that it shouldn't be considered a bad hit because the onus shouldn't be on Roberts to pull up once Janssen turned his back. He could have pulled up. He could have just eased up. But he did neither. I mean, the hit cracked Janssen's helmet. It was a bad, bad hit that drove full force through him. The Islanders had a 5-minute major to get back in it.
Turning around in front, they score. In off a skate. And they get a power.
They'd only manage one. Decent, but not ideal. But soon, power play woes would be the least of New York's concerns.
Here comes Roberts. Out of the penalty box. The major done. They got one goal on the power play while he was gone. Kip Miller scored that in 1948. And one shot on the entire major penalty. Pekka is up into trying to come out. He's hurt. Pekka is down and has not moved on that check. Coming out of the...
Another hit, another Islander down. Darcy Tucker squares up to Pekka to lay a body check. If Tucker drives forward or even slightly upwards, he catches Pekka square in the chest for a perfectly clean hit. But at the last instant, Tucker drops about a half foot, catching Pekka square in the thigh and the knee. Tucker tore Pekka's ACL and MCL, knocking him out of the playoffs. The theory on why Tucker hit low was that Leaf scouting thought that Pekka would drill you in the head as you approached, pretending not to see you coming, so go low to avoid the hit. Maybe the cameras never picked it up, but I didn't see it happen once. It's just a theory. The craziest thing is, this hit was legal, technically. At the time, there was no rule against hitting low. More on that later, but for now, we, and a massively crippled Islanders team, have to close out Game 5. But the game would be just as gutting as the
To
hits.
the corner, McCauley. Back with goals at the line. Shot score! McCabe in a nice play. Got it into McCabe. Winding up. Score! McCabe gets another. Van Imp gets a shot away. Joseph makes a save. Big rebound. They score. It's a goal by Hunter. Some speed. Passes back. McCabe missed it. Shot from the line. Score! Back to the goal, Roberts out front, jams at it, down again, Roberts again, they score! I think it might be McCauley.
All the Islanders could bring back to Nassau on the way of momentum was a goal in garbage time. Peter Laviolette would break his silence on the officiating to verbally castrate the refs for the lack of game misconduct on Roberts' hit on Janssen.
If you watched them, if you watched the tape,
Now for help.
to watch them bounce around the ice and not know what to call
The referees have
for at least 4 or 5 minutes, and then to actually not make the call is disgusting. What they told me was that there was no injury to the face or the head, so my player lay unconscious on the ice. I'm trying to figure out what exactly you need to qualify for a head injury.
While Laviolette was more disgusted with the Janssen hit, the talk around the league was what to do about the low hit on Michael Pekka.
That situation. And as for the hit on Pekka, it was legal. No question about it. Legal hit for Darcy Tucker. But maybe it's time for the National Hockey League to start looking at hip checks and low checks as being illegal hits and take it out of the game.
The journey to Lord Stanley invariably demands a pound of flesh from any team that vies for him. But for some, the lumps that are raised are necessarily endured as a byproduct of a full contact sport. For others, they come at the business end of recklessness and seem all the more senseless for it. The toll that the playoff quest had taken on these two clubs was already massive, but it was more immediately worrying for the Islanders. To lose two key players and the game, their comeback seemed like it might have been for nothing as they faced elimination all the same. But they're going back to Nassau. And in Mike Milbury's words, we're not dead yet. Asking the Maple Leafs to close out a desperate, angry team in a barn where they hadn't yet succeeded was a tall, tall order.
We have to win the game, number one. Stay disciplined is a big thing. Can't sell any scores out there right now.
Enforcer Jim Cummins got the nod as one of 2 people to replace Pekka. And 10 seconds in, he commits a stupid penalty. Fantastic.
Shoots. Osgood the save. Travis Green gets it back in the corner. Feeds McCabe. The drive missed the net. McGillney on the rebound. Osgood trying to get back in position. Tucker denied by Osgood. Darcy Tucker dead on. And Osgood beat him.
Then Vault comes back with the old Scottish ambition. A throat slit. Power play Islanders.
From the draw, Roman Hammerlick cranks, fires, kick save, rebound, score! Cherkovsky!
Marius Cherkovsky got the ball rolling, and full roster energy followed. White and blue went at it after literally every whistle, but just enough to remain inside the rules. Mostly.
Yashin skipping around, tries to center with Joseph out of position. Kabasha to Yashin, he shoots it, he scores!
In the playoffs, the best players have to be the best players, and Yashin rose to the occasion. But so did an unlikely hero for the Leafs.
Fires! And a save by Joseph. And now Coyne scrambles to get back as 3 Leafs attack, led by Corson. The drop to Belak, centers for Green. Osgood down, and Belak scores. And it's 2-1. And icing against the Islanders as Cherkovsky is. Now a shot deflects to McCauley. Down low, Parrish breaks it up. Still loose on the goal line, and it looked like it went in. It looked to the naked eye. Kerry Fraser says no.
Gary Roberts is adept enough at using the force to push this puck over the line. Tie game. Story of the series for the Islanders. Through sheer will, they wrested away all the momentum from Toronto. And then the Leafs wrested it right back. But human pinball Steve Webb would send the Nassau crowd into the intermission with a little bit of fire.
Team. Oh, just nailed Tucker. A clean hit in center. Tucker had his head.
And his teammates were feeling the love too.
Yashin lofts one for Hammerlick. Down low, Bates hit the post, and O'Connor scores! And up the right side comes Hammerlick, lofting one ahead. In comes Yashin, he moves up, shoots, save is made!
But the offense couldn't hog all the glory.
The shot.
Now Reichel steps up, shoots one. Hard pass in front, Tucker cross ice, big save! Penalty is over. Pilash away from Bates. Feeds it cross ice, Lumi. His shot blocked by Cherkovsky. Taken off by Bates, who comes to center. One man back, Bates on the other side. Here comes Blake, closing in. He shoots, save made by Joseph. Game. And now Bates works off a pick towards the net. A backhander stop. Rebound, Parrish. Save by Joseph.
Hot-headedness cooled down for the second period and starting the third, until Steve Webb decided that the crowd was being too quiet.
And Tucker creamed along the boards by Webb. Bates on the puck. Darcy Tucker was hit hard by Webb as the period expires.
Third period. Isles could force a Game 7, or the Maple Leafs could come from behind to close it out and finally put an end to this bloody series. But the series would get bloodier still.
They go together behind the net with Miller gaining the puck. He moves up, shoots, he scores!
Here comes Miller. Miller comes in to find the loose puck, and then that shot is perfect.
They got upended by his own man McCabe. They get back in sync as Miller heads into the corner. Feeds the slot, Cherkovsky scores!
Cherkovsky put the cherry on top of a phenomenal outing for the Isles role players. And with the game basically out of reach, public enemy number 1 or 2, depending on who you ask, got the Leafs within 2. A very late, dominant penalty kill by the Islanders brought Nassau to its feet. Knowing a Game 7 was inbound, the Leafs took out their frustrations on the Islanders. But the Islanders had had pent-up retribution simmering all game long. And now they finally had a chance to let it out.
Take care of Bates and Tucker. Cairns flattens Corson.
Eric Cairns demolished Shane Corson and saluted the crowd. Lest it be forgotten, Corson tried to either knee or kick Cairns. We can debate whether or not Roberts or Tucker tried to injure on their hits, but kicking a restrained player when you have a knife on your foot is, really bad. In the penalty box, Darcy Tucker did this. Interesting fellow. This tooth and claw series would require 7. Peter Laviolette's squad had put forth 3 convincing wins on the island, They just needed one more. But the Leafs only needed one as well. They'd have to do it without Sundin, Renberg, Yushkevich, and Corson, who was suspended for kicking cairns. And the Islanders without Pekka, Janssen, Isbister, and Tarnstrom. Bloodied, exhausted, and all tied up, Toronto and New York limped into Game 7. 60 minutes for the whole season. The crowd was so excited they wouldn't settle down even for the anthems. Alexei Yashin again put the team on his back for the all-important first goal. Crowd was undeterred, chanting "Go Leafs Go" at the very next face-off. But Toronto took momentum right back.
They wave it off. No icing. Centering back. Oh, what a chance that was.
Islanders have come on strong, but now Reichel is coming in on goal. Right in. And again Osgood shines for New York, and the Leafs are out of shot. Osgood stopped this one, and he hangs on.
Penalty box. Tucker looking down to take that.
Too much with it at center. Now he gets another shot at it. Domi comes in and passes back. Roberts scores! What a play by Domi, and what a move by Roberts. That game is tied at 1.
The Maple Leafs would love this goal especially because the Isles hated Roberts. Not least of all because he would injure Osgood in this collision. But Osgood would stay in the game. This series wouldn't claim another player. Everyone on the ice would see the series to its end.
The point is there, but he gets in front of the net. Oh, what a save!
40 minutes remained in one team's season.
Couldn't quite reach it. Here's a shot. Stopped by Joseph. Jensen tries the shot. Joseph barely moved in time on that one. McGillney again. Stick handle through. Comes out front. Beautiful play. Shot. Stop. And got it ahead to Tucker. Rink wide. Chance here. Score. McGillney. Islanders trying to fight back now. Yashin. Pass back. Here's a shot. Joseph the save. Clear to the line. Not out. There's Tucker. Fires a pass. Right goal. Tried to make the play.
Another goof at Pat Quinn's bench saw the Leafs escape being burned by a too-many-men call.
At the blue line was checked immediately. The Leafs don't clear. Here's Hunter. Getting in. Loose puck. And Joseph down.
With all this firepower, it was only a matter of time before either Osgood or Joseph were solved again.
Shoots. Scores. Travis Green. High shot.
But another weak giveaway cost the Islanders. A 2-goal deficit in Game 7 has almost never been overcome.
Over the line with it. Look at the move by him. Back. Oh, and a shot by Lume.
And the Islanders couldn't get anything going to end the second. Third period. 20 minutes and counting. The Islanders had surprised the whole league that year with their rise to relevance. Could they have one more surprise left in them? The Maple Leafs, a team with all the pressure on, with the media, the free agents to be, and the lead to hold. Either their will or the Islanders' fortune would have to give. The Isles needed goals, and they needed them now.
Webb moves it up. Got over the line. The quick shot. Joseph. Big save. Roman Hammerlick. Pass to center Scatcher. Right side. Chance for Miller. Scores! Miller. Quick shot. And it caught the short side.
The Islanders were back in it, and they had 3/4 of a period to tie the game. The Islanders dominated possession. All the worries of Leafs fans and players no doubt flashed across their minds. But Alex McGillney had something to say about that.
Ran on the steam going from the outside in. Then carried his man. Schultz in on the boards. McGillney fighting hard and coming up the puck. Twisting and turning. Still has it. The setup. And the shot by Green was deflected wide. Big work by McGillney here. In on the boards in the corner. That's Tucker. McGillney jumps. And that's wide on the short side.
The Islanders were running out of time.
Around the net is Bates. Back out front it comes, and the shot knocked down in front, and it'll be cleared by the Maple Leafs to center. Green took a swing at it at center ice. They're changing, allowing the Islanders Yashin to come in, and it's stopped by Joseph.
The players moved automatically, exhausted but deliberate, as if in a dream. Instinct had taken over. And for one team, it would mean deliverance.
Over the line, and the shot is stopped by Osgood. Will sprawl to one side, cleared off the board, stopped at the line. Long shot, stopped by Osgood. The New York Islanders is Trent Hunter. He gets in there. He's got a great shot. Here it comes. Hunter! He's stopped by Joseph. Took a swing at it and missed it. Yashin set up, Bates. Yashin down, and it's knocked away from the net. Cleared on the glass, but not out. Bannon pass. Hammerman. No shot. He faked it. Got it back in the slot. No shot. Leafs are scrambling, covering up on the Islanders. Now they're all over him in there. But it comes out. Baby, is this a finish? Or is it a finish? Tchaikovsky shot. That is stopped by Joseph. Centering pass is blocked. Here's Hammerman shooting. That's stopped in front. Off the corner boards. It's McCauley looking for it. He gets it. McCauley can't get it out, but Roberts will. Dumps it over the line. Gary Robertson, and it's empty for McGillney. He scores! Alexander McGillney. Empty net goal. The place goes crazy. The Leafs are going to move on in the Stanley Cup Playoffs.
These 7 games had a foundation of heroism from both organizations and individuals. But it was also a series that had soured into a sordid, poisonous affair, with the spoils for whomever was left would simply be to be the one left. The one ragged, decimated team that could gasp into the next round. And by 2 goals, that forsaken crown went to the Maple Leafs. 2 teams who barely knew each other and came from opposite directions in the standings smashed into each other right in the middle of the playoff picture. While the setup was without history, the result would make history. Both teams deserved to move on. But the tragedy that one didn't isn't as important as the tragedy that the cost was so damaging, so unforgiving, and so high.
In today's Times saying that Bettman had better change his philosophy and crack down. The game's losing its image. Your reaction?
Well, I don't know about that. I think it goes in waves. You know, people talk about a couple instances that always seem to happen close together, and the league gets a black eye. But the fortunate thing for our league is things happen on the ice. A lot of the other professional sports, all the black eyes, or most of them, are happening off the ice. And the one thing about our game is it's full of a lot of great people, and the things that happen on the ice certainly are unfortunate, but they do happen.